Into the Wild is a gripping tale of a young man in his prime, completely driven by his own morals and belief systems. He lived his life in his own way, to the fullest, and fulfilling his dreams of being in complete inner peace. However, it is also a story about a reckless young son rebelling against his parents, driven by teenage angst and his ideals. Ignorant of his own frailty, he completely abandons himself from the people who love him. So drowned in his own reckless ambition, he blindly trusts his own raw talent and knowledge to the point that he accidentally kills himself slowly, in one of the most gruesome ways possible. Today I'm going to talk about the duality of his character and whether his legacy is deserved. The film Into the Wild, directed by Sean Penn, is based on the book of the same name, written by John Craner, which details the true events of Chris McCandless's life and its tragic end. Set in the early 1990s, Chris was born in Washington, D.C. in February 1968. He was born to a very wealthy, intelligent, and incredibly broken family, where he faced the personal trauma that would later lead and fuel his desires and ethical codes. He attended the esteemed University Emory, which he graduated from with flying colours. Chris then donated the majority of his money to charity and headed out for his grand odyssey. Chris used the name Alex as an alias, adopting the moniker Alexander Supertramp whilst hiking across the country. In his travels he encountered numerous different people whose lives he impacted greatly on. However, a couple months after finally achieving his lifelong goal, Chris died of starvation on the 18th of August 1992 in the cruel, massive, cold, unforgiving Alaskan wilderness. Today, I'm going to explain why Chris McCandless is an incredibly admirable but ultimately flawed person, why his legacy is deserved, but not for obvious reasons, and how his life lessons and philosophy can be acknowledged and to a less extreme manner used in your own life. Chris's outlook on life can be mostly tied to his childhood, when the majority of the time he spent with his parents was in the middle of a domestic personal war. Witnessing his main authority figures to be aggressive, vicious, cruel and materialistic instilled in him at a young age a distrust of authority, greed and anger, as well as an underlying disgust of greater society, which he viewed his parents as a representation of. As a child, the moments he enjoyed most were when he was on holidays in the mountains. They were a great time of tranquility for him and his family, which greatly influenced his thinking and started the groundwork for his later outlook. By seeing the effects of wealth, society and influence on his parents, and then seeing the effects of them being removed from that society and in nature, was definitely clear for him. Going through university, Chris developed and later fully formed his philosophy on life, through the vast amounts of books he was reading, which were often about the nomadic wonders of history and the struggles of teenagers in cruel families. When his body was discovered, they found a total of 10 books, a small bag of food, a small gun, compass and spare clothes, which goes to show where his mindset was and what he saw as important. Books of note that were found were The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, a book about the dangers of living a life without meaning. Walden by Henry David Thoreau, a famous transcendentalist, which is a book about the spiritual and psychological effects of living a simple life in natural surroundings and finding inner freedom from independent living. He also possessed a book about mind control written by the same author that wrote Jurassic Park. While Chris was undeniably a wise, good-natured young man, and his worldview, beliefs and actions are all mostly well thought out, they all come from a place of immaturity and personal revenge from the deep wounds of his childhood. His whole life he was the victim of abuse and witnessed domestic violence frequently, which at a young age completely changes the way the human brain processes information and forms neural links. This is backed up by numerous studies showing that trauma at a young age greatly impacts who you are as a person and how you think for your whole life. I believe that while Chris was growing up, he simply just didn't feel loved or safe, and he tried to rationalize his feelings using society as a useful boogeyman for the problems of his own life. He forced himself to be alone in nature, purely because deep down he doesn't connect and feel safe with others, then rationalizes it with philosophy instead of opening up and seeking help from others to improve himself mentally and move on. Instead, he decided to act out a form of revenge and protest against a perceived enemy in his own mind. But really, he just left the only people that cared about him because he wanted to simply get back at them and prove he was better and had a better worldview, because he only thought about his own struggles and perspective, which is a ultimately flawed, unhealthy, selfish and immature view on life, which cost him his. However, I still believe Chris McCandless is a hero for what he represents and his ideology. Just because a philosophy was created from bad experiences doesn't make the philosophy bad. He was human, he wasn't perfect, and his only major flaws were that he was inconsiderate and underprepared. If he disavowed or ignored his view on life simply because he is flawed, you are using faulty logic. Great men can do horrible things, and horrible men can do great things. For example, Albert Einstein's scientific theories helped create the atomic bomb, but would you view him as an awful man? There are three main arguments that could be made against him. One, that he was woefully underprepared and overconfident. And yes, that is true. What he brought to Alaska was nowhere near what he needed to survive. But he still ended up living 2 years on a journey across the world's third largest country, just by hitchhiking, and 4 months by himself in the Alaskan wilderness, and died in a way that could have easily killed most professionals by eating a seed potato that was only toxic because he simply stored it incorrectly. So it grew fungus that was poisonous and starved him to death, which the majority of people would not know about or think about. The second argument is that he was just an oversensitive, massively privileged elite and should have been more down to earth and just accept the situation and live in the great wealth that he had. And that's fine, if you judge people and their struggles and dreams, desires, wisdom, and ultimately their value as a person purely on where they are born and how much money they have. However, that logic could be used to invalidate all humans who have existed. The final point is that he is at fault for inspiring young people to travel out to where he camps, and then eventually has killed many people who followed his footsteps. However, I believe that is grossly unfair to Chris, and is just a flawed take. By using that same logic, you might as well blame the author of the book for writing about his story, and also blame all the authors that inspired Chris to do the journey, or blame Alaska for being such an inspiring and beautiful place, or just blame any other thing that could possibly influence any individual's thoughts and feelings that led to the decision to travel up to Alaska. The truth is, Chris didn't intend to do his trip out of a want for fame. It was an example to millions of people. He just did it for himself, to find his own happiness and freedom, which is the key reason why I think he is an inspiration. He did what he wanted to do and the way he wanted to do it, while at the same time inspiring and deeply impacting the people in his own life, and many more after his life. He just needed to be more prepared, less extreme, communicate more with his family and others, and learn the correct method to store seed potatoes in Alaska. And ultimately, his life could be seen as a tragic warning about those lessons. In the end, all he wanted was to have a simple, peaceful life, keeping to himself and doing what he wanted to do, and being surrounded by nature while doing it. And I think that that's an important life lesson that anyone could use.